Welcome to 2 Cents Short of a Dollar, the show where we give our 2 cents and keep it 100. We're your host. That's Motiz, and I'm Rue. Today we're taking the show on the road. No, literally, we just had to stop and do this. We're just trying to find the right time to get this video out to you guys. I was like, you know what, F it, let's just pull over and let's just, talk this through right now. It was an exciting week of boxing. I was looking back at one of our previous videos just to see some of the feedback, see what people were saying. And I saw some people were kind of like riled up. So I just wanted to talk about the fights real fast. So let's just jump straight into it. So David Morrell, right? We thought him and Katayev thought the fight may have been off, but the fight actually was on. And I don't think the fight went how anybody expected it to go. So when you saw the fight, you saw the performances, just tell me your initial reaction based on Morrell versus Katayev.
I'm not gonna lie, I think Morrell got a gift on that one. Katayev came in, and to my surprise as well, they allowed him to fight, even though they found adverse findings. I kept seeing, a few articles floating around suggesting that he'll be banned for 2 years. It was pretty odd, but apparently he showed up on fight night, fought Morrell. I don't know if you want to consider him being on the juice that night, but Morrell definitely felt this punching power, whether he was juiced up or not, right? Sent Morrell to the canvas. You could tell Morrell kind of was a little wary of his punching power. He still fought Katayev, throughout the fight, but I felt as though Katayev kind of dictated the pace. Morrell didn't let his hands go enough when he had Katayev hurt. So to me, I felt like Katayev may have, won that fight in a very close fight with Morrell. You know what I mean? I do think they gave Morrell a gift there. I scored it Katayev winning that fight.
Yeah, I think there was always the hesitancy of what's coming back, which was smart because Katayev obviously hits very hard. You could just look at him and see he's a strong guy. So Morrell would I don't think he always had the mental clock in his head, but at certain times he had the mental clock. Like, I'm doing some work, but I got to get out. And Testament was the round where he actually got dropped. I think it was round 5. He was doing some great work, but he got out kind of lackadaisical, kind of pulled out in a straight line, brought his hand back kind of slow, and he gets dropped. In a round that he's clearly winning, probably his best round of the fight, he ends up losing the round, in my opinion, 10-8, because he got dropped. So I think he probably, not that he thought it was going to be a walk in the park, but he thought he was going to be able to get off more than he could. And he did hurt Katayev sometimes and sometimes late, but he couldn't really just step on it and take it to the next gear. And I think it was always for the fear of what might happen if I stay in here too long, right? So I agree with you. It was a close fight, but a 10-8 round should have made the difference, in my personal opinion. So I do think Morrell got it. I like the term a gift. I don't think it was a robbery, but I do think it was a gift. Christmas came early.
100%. So, I guess from your perspective, though, would you want Morrell to kind of, in this next fight to automatically go and face a top-notch fighter, or would you want him to take another tune-up? What are your thoughts following that fight?
I guess it depends who's the top-notch fighter, right? He's not going to get Bivol or Beterbiev, right? And then Benavidez is waiting for those fighters. So I guess it's who at 75 else would be considered top-notch, I guess, in your personal opinion? Like, anybody come to mind?
Like a Smith,
Calvin Smith.
like a Calvin Smith.
Yeah. I like Calvin Smith. I think Calvin Smith poses different scenarios, which I think Morrell would handle better than this fight personally. So I think Calvin Smith's a good fight. Do what Benavidez is doing and, trying to get the best active fight. I mean, the best active fight might be running this back, but there's no chance Morrell runs this back, in my opinion. It's just too risky. It'll just throw you off track if you get this L. It's just too risky. And that's unfortunate for Katayev.
I agree.
Yeah. Katayev needs to be in there with like a Joe Smith or something.
He definitely do, bro. The way he was, oh man. Very dangerous guy. So I guess moving on to the next bout.
Yeah.
Which was a very exciting fight. One that you said you was looking forward to the most.
Yes.
Matias versus Puello. So give me your initial thoughts. I guess really give me your thoughts about like at the end of the fight, the way it was scored, how the fight went, all in one package. Go ahead.
So it was the fight I was looking towards the most, and I don't think it disappointed. It was a very close fight, a lot of back and forth. But me personally, I thought Puello pulled it off. I gave him 7 rounds to 5. I think Matias fought the fight that he wanted to fight, but I think Puello in different spurts threw different looks at him. Early on, Puello was beating him to the punch and probably landing the cleaner shots, in my opinion. Obviously, Matias has a great chin, so it's not like Matias was getting buckled early or he didn't go down, he didn't touch the canvas. But I do think Puello was landing what I would consider the bigger shots early, right? Just in terms of how they landed. I'm not talking about how they were taken, right? Because we know Matias has a granite chin. But I think Puello landed the bigger shots early. I think Matias controlled the middle of the fight. His pressure and consistency started weighing Puello down. And at a point, I'm like, yo, Puello might go. But then he kind of changed up the tactic. He was smothering. He was doing a lot of grabbing. But it in the midst of the grabbing, he was also swinging and throwing punches. He never stopped throwing punches, right? So he never just retreated and kept his hands, tucked. So he kept fighting back. And then I think later on, then we see Matias gas, which is something we don't see often because he doesn't go to distance very often. We seen him gas, and I think Puello took advantage of that and won all the championship rounds. In my personal opinion, he buckled Matias a couple times towards the end. So I just think, for me, I think my honest opinion, Matias landed the more clean and effective punches. I give the ring generalship to Puello, clean and effective punches. I give Matias ring generalship because he fought the fight he wanted to fight. He wanted to keep coming, backing you up, throwing the volume. He wanted to. So but I also give Puello, I'm going to give him the defense because he tried something. I know not a lot of people like the clinching, right? But it did neutralize Matias some, right? It didn't allow him to keep getting off and get that momentum. And I think it was a tactic. I don't think it was just out of survival. I think it was a strategy, whether you like it or not. So I do think the defensive strategy that he employed was better than what Matias employed, which was just playing defense with his chin like he always does. You know what I mean? So, in my
That's
personal
funny.
opinion, close fight. However, the rounds were close, so I can see someone thinking one way or another. Just me personally, I thought Puello won, but it's another fight that I wouldn't call a robbery, right? It was just very, very close. I thought Puello pulled it off. Obviously, the judges thought otherwise. So, what was your opinion in the fight?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I have to agree with you. I didn't think it was a robbery. I scored the fight 7-5 in favor of Puello.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I had prior to the fight I had Matias winning. So I would say up until round I want to say 9, maybe 10, the fight kind of went exactly where I predicted it was gonna go, right? In terms of like Matias putting the pressure. I want to say up until like round 8. He started to, you can see Puello start to drown at certain parts of the fight, right? You see him, desperately trying to fight or fend off Matias and this absolute pressure. Matias walking through punches. One thing I noticed about Matias this fight compared to some of his other fights, even though he gets hit, for this fight, he was moving his head a lot more. Like with incoming punches, he'll take a punch, but he'll kind of just like come forward like this, take some shots off, and then just come forward and just hit Puello, right? With soft touches and then just go to the body with a hard shot, And Puello was just in the beginning of the fight was loading up, right? That's the tactic for you to burn yourself out. One thing I do disagree with you about is Puello's defensive strategy. I do think he did it out of survival,
Mm-hmm.
but it ended up working, right? Because in the beginning of the fight, you could tell he was, I'm gonna box him, try to turn him, but when the pressure really started to mount, you could see him like, yo, just grab Matias. It was a point in time he grabbed Matias literally 4 times in a row and not throwing no punches because he was that exhausted. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? The ref even warned Matias in the late rounds, but surprisingly, the ref never deducted a point, which is ironic because when he fought Gary Antoine Russell, they deducted a point for excessive holding, and he didn't hold nearly as much, compared to this fight, right? Because like I guess in the Gary Antoine Russell fight, in one round where Gary Antoine kind of like hurt him a little bit, but he fought through it. He kind of started grabbing Gary Antoine, right? As a way to just like, all right, let me just get through this round, and they deducted a point. But in this fight, I guess the ref kind of let him be. But even with that, I didn't like the excessive holding. I still scored it in favor of Puello, right? So I do think Puello won the fight, but it was a really close fight. There was a couple swing rounds, and I wouldn't be mad if it was a draw. So I mean, it is what it is. It was a phenomenal fight, though. It was a great fight, action packed from start to finish.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Jump in the comment section. Tell us what you guys think, because that was a very close fight. It was a fight I was looking forward to the most. I thought it was very 50-50. The odds makers thought it was 50-50. So tell us who you think won the fight. Did the judges get it right? Did the judges get it wrong? But moving on to the next fight, perhaps the guy who was on his way to having performance of the night until Hamza showed up. But then let me not jump the gun there. So Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda. Shakur said, "Hey, I'm gonna fight this fight." All that Tom and Jerry stuff. You're gonna see Jerry beat Tom's ass or whatever the verbiage was that he used, right? But Shakur goes in there and he wins. I'll say this up front: the judges had it like I think 11-1 and 10-2. I think that's a little wide, but nevertheless, I do think Shakur won comfortably. But what do you think of his performance?
I think it was a overall, it was a good performance. One thing, and we talked about this during our breakdown, our fight prediction breakdown. I anticipated Shakur stepping to Cepeda. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think he was going to do it that soon off the gate, right? So when he stood there and fought Cepeda out the gate like that, I kind of was like, whoa, like he really is a man of his word. On top of that, I was a bit concerned because I'm like, you may exhaust yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a 12-round fight. Cepeda's going to bring it. So overall, good performance. There were certain times in the fight where I was kind of like for instance, Shakur being on the ropes too long. I felt like that was an instance what I didn't like from Shakur because when he was on the ropes, yes, he was taking some punishments at times and he was getting hit with certain punches that he really couldn't see. And although he was deflecting many of those punches, Zepeda had the best work when he had Shakur on the ropes.
Yeah.
Shakur fought his best fight when he had Zepeda in the middle of the ring and he did not back down like he did in the championship rounds, where he refused to say, I'm not going to the ropes this time. I'm going to fight you here. And it was crazy because defensively, he looked a lot better in the center of the ring. He was able to roll a lot of shots, come
Mm-hmm.
back counter, and he started letting his hands go. I'm not sure if that was a tactic. You know, I know we were talking about it. I know you may have a different opinion on, I'm still kind of, at first I was like, why is he just, and I understand Zepeda's pressure may have influenced him going to the rope, but I felt as though he was more so like, let me just go to the rope. And he did say that he's comfortable towards the rope, but it didn't make sense because you're getting touched up a lot more. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe he didn't want to exhaust himself by standing in the middle of the ring for majority of the fight as well, right? So, but outside of that, good performance. Zepeda though, I'm disappointed in Zepeda because Zepeda kept tagging the body and it
Mm-hmm.
was not working. Like Shakur was in the Philly shell, so sometimes in the Philly shell they'll attack the chest in order to bring the opponent's head down so they could go come up top with an overhand.
Mm-hmm.
Zepeda did not utilize an overhand as much. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Compared to we use this example all the time, the Floyd and the Maidana fight, where Maidana was throwing a lot more overhands and was a lot more aggressive. So yeah. But overall though, Shakur proved a lot of doubters wrong. Good performance.
Yeah. I mean, Shakur did his thing. I think it was a very good performance. I agree with you. I think Zepeda. Well, let me start by saying this. I think Zepeda forced Shakur onto the ropes because, like, when fighters coming forward, unless you're just gonna stay there in the middle and do rock'em sock'em, someone has to move in a direction. And I think because Zepeda comes so forward so much, I think Shakur had to kind of move back, and a lot of times it ended up on the ropes. But early on, I think Zepeda had more success because I think he switched up his punches more towards the latter end of the middle and the latter of the fight. I feel like the punches got stale. Like you said, it was a lot of work to the body. But if he would have went maybe like body head body, just kind of switched it up, I think we'd have seen him maybe land something more, maybe more effective. I don't know if the shoulder roll was like discouraging him or what it was, but the punches seemed kind of repetitive, and I think Shakur was able to anticipate them very well. But what I will say in this fight though is it seemed like Shakur had the bigger punches. Like his punches overall had more effect on Zepeda than Zepeda's punches had on him. But
Hmm.
that kind of goes back to the pre-fight breakdown when we were talking about Zepeda can overwhelm you with volume and consistency, but he's not necessarily a big one-shot puncher.
Yep.
And but I do think Shakur proved doubters wrong in this sense. I think doubters kind of lost sight of where the initial criticism came from, right? The criticism of Shakur kind of came up with the excessive movement when he was fighting big punchers. Shakur isn't doing that excessive movement every fight, right? He doesn't fight every fight like how he fought Edwin De Los Santos, but Edwin De Los Santos is a big puncher. So I think the criticism was, and and then we go back to Nakatila, who was also considered a pretty good puncher, right? So I think the criticism is, hey, why do you move this much against big punches when you're such a good defensive fighter? Could you exert less energy, move less, counter more, make a miss? So I think that's where people started criticizing Shakur, but it got blown out of proportion, became a domino effect. Because, Shakur wasn't just running against Padley. You know what I mean? Um, when he fight guys like Yoshino, he isn't just running against, you know what I mean? So I think the criticism, you know how the internet is, something starts, it gets blown out of proportion, everyone tries to jump in, like me personally, right? I I thought an interesting matchup for Shakur would be a guy like Pitbull Cruz, where we know he has power, he stays tight, he's coming forward as well. He doesn't throw as much volume as Zepeda, but I would be interested to see what Shakur does against someone considered a power puncher, right? Because I think that's the only thing people were trying to disprove, that maybe the De Los Santos thing was an anomaly. I don't think people were just saying Shakur is going to run against everybody. You know what I mean?
Hmm. I
Yeah.
agree.
So
That's a good point.
I think the criticism got blown out of proportion. Nevertheless, I thought it was a great performance. A lot of counter shots. Later on, he started moving more, and like what you said, when he was in the center of the ring, it was clear as day. Now, when Zepeda got him to the ropes, it was exciting because, like, okay, what are we gonna get here? And early on, it was
Yeah.
exciting. We saw Shakur counter, and we seen Zepeda landing. I think, like I said, later on in the fight, Zepeda's punch selection seemed a bit stale. But overall, very good performance by Shakur. Interested to see what he does next. You could see the emotions were there. He was emotional after the fight. Seemed like he was holding tears back. But one thing I'll say, Shakur, is like the doubters and stuff will be back. So you got to keep putting on these kind of performances. But I don't think many of us doubted that he would win this fight and win
Right.
comfortably. I know there was a guy in the comments, we saw it. I don't know if you saw that one, but I saw the comment. He was like, "You guys are just picking Shakur because he's black. It's racial." I'm like, no, I don't think it's racial. I just think styles make fights, and I just don't think Zepeda had enough punching power to really worry Shakur.
Yep.
Right. I just don't think he had enough punching power to worry Shakur, and I think Shakur standing there and stepping to him as early as you said is a testament of that.
100%. 100%. Right. Because would he have fought that same fight against De Los Santos, a big puncher? I don't think so. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, it's just that much more riskier, with and Shakur's a smart fighter.
Mhm.
Even after the fight, he said he's probably don't expect him to fight like that,
Yeah.
moving forward, right? So, and he'll find a fine line between the two. But I got one question for you. Do
Yeah.
you think um the public's view on his style had a heavy effect on how he came into this fight?
Somewhat heavy. 50-50.
50-50? Okay.
He was trying to prove the public wrong, but Zepeda forced his hand as well, in my opinion.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so
Fair
so
enough.
I don't want to take credit away from Zepeda. Zepeda forced him into some of those situations, but I do think he was cognizant of what people were saying and wanted to prove. All right, I'm gonna say this: 40-40-20, right? I think 40 public, 40 Zepeda, 20 Turkey. I think Turkey will stop paying you if you put on boring fights. So I think that was kind of his mind as well. Like, y'all got to keep making this bag. So
No, I'm not gonna lie. That's a great point with the pay, because you still got to get paid. You know what I mean? You got
yeah,
to bend the knee.
yeah. So Shakur, and before we move on from Shakur, what would you like to see next from him? Obviously, we want to see the Tank fight, but that doesn't realistically seem like the next fight. So, what would you like to see from Shakur next at 135 pounds?
I mean, at this point, 135 pounds kind of is a bit skimpish. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could fight Floyd Schofield next, because Floyd Schofield's still asking for the fight.
Yeah.
Shakur said he's willing to make that fight happen. If not, unify, right? Abdullah Mason's still there. See if you could unify, collect as many belts as possible.
Mm-hmm.
With I don't think Tank is gonna fight Shakur, at least not at this particular point in time. So we have to
Yeah.
wait and see what happens. But I know that Shakur was having he went on Ariel Hawani's podcast and he was speaking to Conor Ben. and he said that he'll make the fight happen next if he has to with Conor Ben at 147 pounds. Not sure how realistic that's going to be, but according to
Cap.
Conor Ben, according to Conor Ben, Eubank is not going to fight him. According to Conor Ben, he ducked him. Eubank Jr. ducked him, and they shook hands. They said that they was going to make the fight happen at 147. How believable is that for you?
Cap. Cap. Shakur's not going to 147. He's not going to jump over 40 and go to 47. It's just a lot of risk at like, is Shakur a superior tactician to Conor Ben? Yes. But it's just a lot of risk. Conor Ben coming forward, just being bigger than you. Because let me throw this scenario, and I don't want to get too far off course, right? But someone who brings a lot of pressure like William Zepeda, right? Let's say if Shakur went to 40 and fought Matias, do you think the fight would look different?
Yeah, because of the size, arm length, the
Yes.
relentless. Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, Matias is eating everything. You gotta hit him with a brick and a
Yeah.
sledgehammer.
So I'm I'm
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm just skeptical that he would just go from 35 to 47 for this, right? I mean, no belts, no nothing. I'm skeptical, So I'm calling cap on that right now.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. And then moving on to the main event, right? Hamza Sheeraz versus Edgar Berlanga. We both picked Edgar Berlanga. I know you had stoppage. I think I may have had stoppage as well. Um, there was a stoppage, but we were both dead wrong, bro. Dead wrong. And I
Uh,
remember we were like kind of like hesitant on who we wanted to pick. It was a lot of going back and forth, but at the very end, we both picked Berlanga. We were both wrong. Hamza Sheeraz, the new king of New York, made us eat our words, right?
the King of New York and the King of London.
Yo, come on, bro. Come on. What surprised you in that fight? Then I'll tell you what surprised me.
I'm not gonna lie. What surprised me and what I did not anticipate was Hamza's physical strength.
Mm-hmm.
He was physically stronger than Berlanga, and he stood his ground and
Mm-hmm.
was even pressing Berlanga and making Berlanga fight on the back foot.
Yeah.
So that was like a different approach that I anticipated, but the physicals is what I did not anticipate. I thought Berlanga was the stronger and bigger puncher out of the two, but
Mm-hmm.
you could just tell like immediately when he pushed Berlanga back at one point, it was reminiscent of Terrence Crawford pushing Errol Spence back,
Good point.
and when he threw like an uppercut and the way Berlanga reacted to it
Yeah.
versus how Hamza was reacting to Berlanga's punches, I was like, ooh, you know what I mean? So that's initially what surprised me for sure.
Yeah. I think I texted you. I'm like, yo, that right hand is flying in, bro. If he connects with that, but what
Yeah.
surprised me is the roles seemed reversed. It seemed like Edgar was doing better fighting on the outside behind the jab, right? Which I think would be more of where Hamza would be having success. Edgar seemed to have decent success with the jab from the outside. It seems like
Hmm.
Hamza baited him to come inside, right? To get
Hmm.
closer. I felt like because I felt like Hamza could have kept jabbing, throwing that right, and it would have kept Edgar Berlanga at bay. And Edgar was struggling with the reach as well, but it seemed like
Hmm.
Hamza invited him in, let him get in there, and then that's when he landed that vicious like three piece, bro. It was so vicious. You just seen nothing but bad intention behind it. And
Yeah, he was throwing his whole body into it, and
yeah,
it's funny because you text me, you was like, yo, that right hand he throwing, them punches, it's like whipping right past him. And I'm looking and I'm like, yeah, if it's doing and it's consistent, it's only a matter of time. You're gonna have to get touched, you know?
yeah. So I think he outsmarted Berlanga, which is not like a far stretch or anything, but it's just the tactic, right? It's not like he outsmarted him by saying, I want to fight my fight on the outside. He outsmarted him kind of in like, it was similar to Fandora. People expect Fandora just to fight on the outside, but Fandora wants to bang. He wants you to come, right? And it was like, once he got Berlanga in there, he was able to throw those very short but precise hooks. And I think it was over after the second knockdown. I'm kind of surprised. Berlanga got saved by the bell, but I'm kind of surprised the ref let him go. And I know it's only a 10 count, right? But I think Berlanga was getting up too fast. I think he needed to take an extra second just to try to take an extra breath, like inhale and then get up just a little bit slower. I think he was getting up too fast. He would punch his gloves and just hop back up. But you were legitimately hurt. It wasn't a flash knockdown. So I think he needed to take an extra second. I think that kind of backfired. I do think he was done after the second knockdown, but the third one definitely put it away.
Yeah, he was cooked. I was like, your voice. He Berlanga tore his ACL. Like he just the way he bet it's man. I mean, and it was so crazy because I
So
remember we both were talking about it, and we were just so hesitant to pick Berlanga, but we was just like, you know what? Hamza just didn't look that good in his last fight. He was a bit antsy, and I'm not gonna lie. I felt like Hamza coming into this fight, he was on a big stage. I didn't know how that was going to affect him. We seen Berlanga in the stage with Canelo, so he's at least seen the bright lights. And Hamza really took this serious, but it was like life or death for him. I'm not gonna lie,
mhm,
the way Berlanga was talking, how greasy he was talking, Hamza probably was like, yo, I gotta put this guy down for good. Like the way he took it, he's like, yo,
yeah,
I gotta. The way Hamza fought, it was like life or death for him. Like, you know what I mean? Like he
yeah.
really and it showed and it worked out for him. So congrats to him. You know what I mean? And Berlanga just, I guess, proved or showed really who he is in that sense in terms of what level he's at. And maybe Hamza needs to, you know what I mean? And it's hard to kind of gauge where Hamza's at in all of this,
Mhm.
especially moving up to 168, what level he's at. Can he compete with the likes of Canelo Alvarez? Because that was an impressive performance. That's yet to be answered. So we'll see.
I'll say this, right? You know me personally. I think, and this is for my man too, who said I pick Shakur just because he's black. I think Canelo's going to beat Terrence Crawford. But what I'm a little bit surprised about is it seems that Turkey already kind of has it lined up for Canelo and Sheeraz to fight, right? So that's kind of interesting to me because I'm like, oh, Crawford's his guy, and I'm just like, yo, will he try to pull some strings to make it more of like an even playing field for Crawford? Maybe he wants Crawford to win, but it seems like he wants Canelo to win, or else why would he already have something lined up for Canelo, right?
Yeah, that
with
is
Hamza.
odd.
So
Yeah,
that's
that's odd. I ain't gonna lie. You're right about that because it's like you're anticipating, I guess, Crawford losing to Canelo, or you do just not care about the end result and you still want to make the Canelo versus Hamza fight, you know?
right, right. But I think he cares about end results, unless it just depends on who, because it seems like Garcia and Haney is off, right, based on other results. So that's kind of interesting to me. But to your point of where Hamza's at, you know who I think would be a good fight for him? Maybe Pacheco.
Mm,
Maybe
okay,
Pacheco would be a good fight to kind of
okay.
as like a measuring stick. And granted, styles make fights, so it doesn't matter if he looked better against Berlanga. That doesn't dictate what's going to happen if he fights Canelo. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
maybe Pacheco would be a good fight for us to say, okay, let's see something else from you. Let's kind of see where you're at.
No, that's a good point. I like that fight. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie. Just to really like really gauge him and see, okay, maybe you're just levels above Belonga, but that's not saying much. Let's see you with other competition, you know?
yeah. And then for Belonga, I guess what's next for him? Is it just the Caleb Plant fight, both coming off of losses? Is that it? Do you or is he a big guy? Should he be fighting at 75? But I mean, if this is happening to you at 68, can you withstand 75?
Man, Katav it would bury Berlanga. Like a guy like Katav, unless he gets suspended for 2 years. But even Morel would
Oh,
violate Berlanga. So it's not
yeah.
even, you know what I mean? I don't see no one at 175. Caleb Smith could beat Berlanga. Like it's yeah, even Anthony Yarde, even though he's tied up with Benavidez, I don't want to mention Benavidez, right? Because even your guy, Hamza Shiraz, was like, nah, I'm not ready for that type of smoke. I
Yeah.
ain't ready for that type of smoke. So I don't want to
Yeah.
mention Benavidez in the same breath as Berlanga. But yeah, he has to stay at 168. Shit,
Okay.
if he can make 160, that might be his best bet. But Charlo's coming up, right? So
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Good
I don't
fight.
know if
Good
that could
fight.
be a potential fight, just to kind of they can match him up, see where Charlo's at, and fight
Yeah.
Berlanga. That could be a fight, but have to wait and
Yeah.
see.
He has to get Charlo before Charlo gets a couple more fights under his belt, or else I think Charlo's just gonna box circles around him. My personal opinion, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, interested. I'm less interested in what we get from Berlanga next, but I am interested. I'm more interested to see what we get from Shiraz next. Um, like I said, I think the Pacheco fight's a good fight. If they can make that happen, or maybe he's just gonna wait for Canelo and Crawford to the dust to settle, and then. But it seems like Canelo is the next fight that Turkey's eyeing for him. But nevertheless, tell us what you guys thought about the performance. Make sure you jump in the comment section. Make sure you like. Make sure you subscribe. 2 cents short of a dollar, taking it on the road today. Let me get out of here. I got to go get my daughter, y'all.